Hello, beautiful people. Long time no see, right, guys? I know that I come at you with these in waves, which is, I don't know, you take it where you can get it. But I'm excited because I got another great guest coming on today to continue things as we head into the end of summer and into fall. I want to introduce to everybody my friend Michael Penchansky from Nosh NY Bagels in Ridgeland. How are you, bro?
Hey, man. How you doing? Hi, everyone.
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So I'm just going to give you a quick plug here at the top. Obviously, as many of you know and the audience know, I am from New Jersey, and a hot button topic, if you will, down here in the Low Country is bagels. So we're going to jump right into it. But I will say this. I'm obviously everybody knows that I'm a big wrestling fan. A big term that they use in pro wrestling is called tribalism. Tribalism is like if someone likes WWE, then everything that AEW or All Elite Wrestling does is garbage. And if someone likes AEW, then they hate WWE. And it's interesting because that really lends itself to bagels. We did an episode in the first season of the podcast where we talked about pizza and how controversial a subject that was. And I would say bagels are just as controversial in this area, especially with people that, migrate down here from up north. All I will say is this. I know I said it was going to be a quick plug. I guess nothing I ever really say is quick. But all I will say is this. Ever since Nosh NY Bagels opened right down the road from me on 170 in Ridgeland, they have more than filled the gap, or I would say have basically immediately become my favorite place for bagels. And when I say that, I'm not disparaging Island Bagel or anywhere else that you can get a bagel or a bagel sandwich. It's okay to like vanilla ice cream and chocolate ice cream and strawberry ice cream. For me personally, Nosh is my favorite bagel in the area. For other people, that may not be the case. They may be loyal to Island Bagel. They may say it's still not like the bagels that we get up north. But as far as I'm concerned, it is as good of a bagel as you can get anywhere around here. And I have been, as Michael will attest, working my way slowly but surely through the menu. I won't say one sandwich at a time, Mike, right? Because it's more like usually 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 at a time. I may not eat them all in one sitting. But then, of course, I got to throw in a babka and some other things here and there. And you're always kind of coming over and saying, try this and try that. And sort of being a, what is it called? What is it called when you support an enabler? You're definitely yeah. Well, you're definitely an enabler of my habit. So anyway, I'm going to stop blabbing. And so what we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to show some photos of some sandwiches and things like that. But the fact of the matter is that we want to, as we discussed, you and I ahead of this, we want to kind of, have a little bit of fun today. We're not going to just talk about bagels. What I want to start with is, what brought you here. A lot of people know my backstory. I've been here for about 4.5 years. Obviously, I'm a huge foodie, and I've been doing food content since before I got down here on Instagram and Facebook, but then, kind of little by little started to become a passion project and, a food media entity, if you will. But give people a little bit of a background as far as, where you come from, what brought you here, and what your experience has been like, opening a restaurant in the Bluffton area.
Yeah, well, thanks, Nick. And I'm happy to do that, go through the background. A couple quick things I want to say to your intro. First and foremost, bagels, like who knew, right? Like how emotional people get about bagels. So we'll talk a lot more throughout this time together about that. We got some good stories and so forth. But I do want to say, number one, thank you to you for everything you've done for the Low Country, you know, in terms of helping to bring food, you know, let's call it, for lack of a better term, to the table for everyone. And true story, you know, yes, you and I have now developed a friendship, but that was based off, you know, admittedly me being very green in this industry, you know, not knowing who anyone was, including you or anyone who was anyone in this industry. You know, my wife and I went into this opening up something out of a passion, and we didn't come from this background. So the first time you came into the store, I happen to, you know, interact with as many of our customers as we can, because I love that part of the business. You were sitting down, and to your point, you had quite a bunch of food on the table. And I was like, who is that? Like, who ordered all that? And they were like, oh, that's Nick. He does, you know, food blogging and so forth. And I was like, I think I came over and I was like, dude, are you going to eat all that? You know? And
you did. That's exactly what you said.
Like,
don't mind me, by the way, because I'm just going to while you're doing this, I want to see if I can pull up that photo of the table covered in bagels. So while you're talking, don't be distracted.
But look, you know, for everyone who's listening here, and you know, I just think it's important to say, like, what you do is authentic. You know, you came in unannounced. You didn't say you were there to do any kind of food review or anything. You didn't ask for anything, you know, for free. You didn't ask for like nothing. It was just as authentic can be. And I think that's why you and I are here talking right now and have developed this awesome relationship. So thank you to everything.
I appreciate that, man. I really do.
You know, and so, you know, a little bit of background. On the 15th of this month, we'll be 5 months old. We opened in April. You know, my wife and I came down 2 years ago in August. You know, fairly familiar with the area. Just my wife's from Ohio. I'm from New Jersey. You know, we were living in Jersey for a long time together. And, you know, quite honestly, Jen has been begging me to move down here for many, many, many years. And, you know, just being from Jersey, you get caught in this lifestyle of, you know, corporate America, running into the city, spending 2 hours, you know, on a PATH train or a regular train with some other person, you know, in your personal space, and
the old rat race.
Yeah. And like, you know, you think that that's just how life has to be, right? Like, and no disrespect to New Jersey or New York, because, you know, we still go back all the time. My family's there, my friends there. I love it. I had the best childhood growing up in that area, you know, but we wanted something a little bit unique and different for our kids. And, you know, a couple of years ago, my wife finally convinced me, as did an increase in our property taxes. But, you know, that's a whole nother story.
I feel that.
You know, and we came down here, and, you know, I felt like a little bit of a fish out of water at first, but we always had vacationed on Hilton Head because, you know, Jen had gone from Ohio every summer to the island. And then when we started dating 15 years ago, I started going with her and her family. And when you're from New Jersey, you know, now it's different, but back, you know, then, or even longer, you didn't come to South Carolina. You know, you kind of just got in this groove of like, you drove through South Carolina or flew over it to get to Florida, you know, and especially me coming from a Jewish background, my parents were in Boca, and it's just what you did. But, you know, now 2 years later, I can tell you it is the best move we've ever made. I'm thriving. Jen's thriving. We're just happy. Our children are really, really happy here. The community has been fantastic. And just this melting pot of, you know, people that are from the South, people that are from the North, people that, you know, just really are intermingling, intermixing, and just really, you know, building this awesome community around us has been fantastic, you know. And now we've got food at the center of what we're doing here. You know,
which is the food is the universal language. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I have to, you know, kind of interject there. You and your wife, it's just basically the exact same almost situation as me and my wife, except the roles are reversed. So, you know, Jen's been coming to Hilton Head for years and years, right? And she introduced you to it. Yeah. I've been coming to Hilton Head since I was I always say 10 years old. I don't know what it was. It was definitely, you know, when I was younger. And my mom was like, we need a break from Disney. And so, we're going to go to, we're going to go to Hilton Head. We had friends of ours, family friends, that would come down here every year. So we just started moving our timeshare to Hilton Head. And then I met my wife and she fell in love with it, the landscape and everything. We became foodies kind of together when we started our relationship. And so, part of that was, like you said, the food was part of what brought us here. And a lot of people up north kind of couldn't wrap their heads around that, years ago, Hilton Head was like, you had, the hibachi place and you had Fuddruckers, and not to say you didn't have some good restaurants, but when I was younger, it was just like you were doing, like say Fuddruckers. That's where the babysitter would take us when my parents were going to CQs, and we would go to Crazy Crab in Harbortown, and we would wait 45 minutes to an hour and a half for a table, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't until I became a foodie that I started to kind of expand my horizons. But Jocelyn, as I mentioned a number of times, she's got a master's in sustainability studies, and she runs the SCORE program for the Outside Foundation. So she's really living her dream down here. And, my entire immediate family moved here. And I agree with you. When you talk about the community, they have that old saying, and I know you guys are in Ridgeland, but let's be real. I mean, it's right over the border from Bluffton into Ridgeland there on 170. So, we'll just keep it real and keep it B-town. But they have that saying, and I got one of the signs from the country store, whatever it was, hanging up in the living room. Bluffton is a state of mind, and it really truly is. Like you said, it's not like the melting pot that you would refer to when you're talking about New York City, which is where you used to be, commuting in when you were doing your, owning your company. Which was what remind me, it was software.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, real quick, I mean, I spent, Jen and I met in the fashion industry. I used to run global sales and distribution for some really big brands. And then I started a software company in 2011. Jen was actually our first employee. And so when e-commerce was just, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I wish I could turn it off. It exhausts me. It's why I literally am like a narcoleptic and just pass out at night, like on command. When we started that company, and Jen was my first employee at that time, and lo and behold, now we're married with kids. So go figure. And if you told me then, if you had told me when I was graduating college that I'd own a software company, and if you told me when I owned a software company that I'd own a restaurant, I've never even been a waiter in a restaurant at all. Yeah. And opposite to you, I'm the furthest thing from a foodie in the sense that my palate is the equivalent of like an 8-year-old's palate, which is one of the things that I think also helps Nosh be so successful. Because if you put me in a 5-star restaurant with like the fanciest menu and so forth, there's literally nothing on it that I probably would order.
Really?
I'm a big comfort casual food guy, you know, and that was one of the things that drove us to kind of create this down here. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and the background, like, honestly, like I'm the same way. I don't have anything to say negative about New Jersey. I'm 46 years old. I lived there, until I was, 40, 41, whatever. I don't have anything negative to say about New Jersey. I had a great life there. I grew up in Wyckoff in Bergen County. My wife and I actually went to the same nursery school up in Oakland, which is where I lived before I lived in Wyckoff. But shortly thereafter, she moved up to Warwick, New York. But we met in working at the same mortgage company. She was working at a local mortgage company. I started doing mortgages with my friend. I was in between jobs. I was doing some marketing for him. Ended up working at the mortgage company. That's where we met. And, we started dating. And, I would say that was, we started dating in October. I took her to a Police concert on Halloween night. And then fast forward to, the following summer, obviously, she came to Hilton Head with us, and she fell in love with this place. And then, eventually started going to graduate school and her project was oyster shell recycling and oyster reef restoration. So, even before COVID, we started thinking about doing it. And then when COVID hit and, there was a lot of that migrating west and south and everything like that, when everybody was cooped up in their homes. And I lived on a postage stamp in a 1,700 square foot house, which I loved. I mean, I lived there for 10 years. It was great in Hawthorne, which is where my dad's side of the family is from. So, but at that point, it was just like, I always used to say, this was the story that I would tell people. And I told it so many times for the first year or two that I was here. The best mood that I was ever in was when I was driving over the bridge, or let's say, we would either go straight from Savannah Airport, into Hilton Head, or Joss and I would go to Savannah the night before, and we would, do our thing in Savannah. And then we would, my parents would fly in the next day or whatever, and we would meet them. The best mood that I was ever in was when I was coming over the bridge onto Hilton Head, right?
Yeah.
The worst mood that I was ever in, a week, or if I was lucky enough, 2 weeks once we got to come down. The worst mood that I was ever in was when I had to leave. So when we got to COVID, and honestly, I have to also loop in the fact that, as we're on the precipice of the NFL season starting this evening, and we got a Monday night football game on Monday between the Vikings and the Bears. My late father-in-law was a huge Vikings fan. And he passed away suddenly it'll be almost 10 years ago in April. And, I was actually on a plane to WrestleMania in Dallas, Texas, and, back in whatever year that was. And, I found out that he had passed away, and that was very devastating for us. And I had a very close relationship with him on a number of levels. And when that happened, we were just kind of like, why are we going to wait to go do something that we want to do? Let's just do it now. I was very grateful. I always talk about The Office when Jim says in that last episode, I owe everything to this crazy, stupid. He goes back and forth between positive and negative adjectives, referring to working for the paper company, and I had a very similar feeling. The mortgage industry is not easy, but the good years in them, and you're related to that too. I know you do some commercial real estate stuff. The thing with me was that, fortunately I had a couple of good years, and a lot of people were, because that's all people were really doing in 2020, were buying houses. And so when the rates were so low, that I was fortunate enough that I was able to put a couple of good years together, and I was able to make it happen. And I was able to purchase a home down here. We ended up purchasing a home in new construction. And then we spent several months as we waited for the home to be finished, getting our ducks in a row, getting ready to move, getting ready for the house to sell, which we did, a couple of months after we moved down here. We closed on the sale of our house up there. And, and then my parents followed about a month or so after. They lived with us for 4 or so months or so while they waited for their house for a bunch of renovations to be done. And then my sister and my brother and my cousin followed suit, a little after a year later. And now here we are, in September of 25. My brother and sister are both homeowners. They both purchased homes out in Hardyville, out in Hilton Head Lakes, which is beautiful. And, we just I feel a great sense of pride and accomplishment for that, because I really feel like I gave my parents a better life. And again, it's not to disparage New Jersey. It's just, I wanted to honestly extend my parents' lives and give them a retirement that they deserved, while at the same time, selfishly wanting to spend time in the place that I had really, fallen in love with, and that my wife had fallen in love with. So, it's really, I think it's important for people to know those stories and how they came about and how we came here. Because that's part of, that story, your story is part of who you are, and part of what, you're what you're creating with this business that, like you said, you never would have imagined that you would be, owning a bagel shop in Ridgeland, South Carolina, right?
And here, it's funny, you're talking about moving down here and all this stuff. Like, the thing I'll say is, I wish there was more time in life in general, right? Because, just because you moved to South Carolina doesn't mean you left Jersey because, it was bad, or South Carolina is better for this. Everything's different, right? There's 50 plus states in the US. There's countries all over the world. Like, the reality is, if I had more time in life, I'd want to live X amount of time in all these different places and experience all these different things. And by the way, experience all these different careers. I've been fortunate enough to reinvent myself and ourselves, with the support of my wife, who tends to be as crazy as I am and jump into these things with me. No joke, or I wouldn't do it, right? Like, if she didn't give me the ability or the leeway to do these things, I'd be afraid to do them, right? But like I always say, man, if I could look back in life and have been in the corporate world, been a restaurant owner, been a police officer, been like, I would love to be able to do all of this stuff, you know? And by the way, like Jersey, I loved New Jersey and I still love New Jersey, like for what it brought me. I love South Carolina for what South Carolina brings, you know? I loved my time in the city. I lived in the city. I lived in Hoboken for 15 years. I like every single little snippet of life that I've experienced. And there's been ups and downs, of course. It hasn't all been as easy as I'm just talking about right now. It's actually been, you know, pretty rough at times.
We've had long conversations.
Yeah.
I will say that, you know, you and I have to really thank you because you and I became fast friends because we're kind of like, you know, simpatico. We're like kindred spirits. We've kind of been through it, and I've had some challenges, you know, personally and professionally over the last several months, which you're well aware of, and you've been amazing, kind of giving me advice and imparting to me that, you know, you've gone through similar experiences. So that I think that's kind of one of the things that brought you and I closer together, other than, you know, the food.
Yeah, no, look, man, you know, I try to help. I've had a lot of, you know, not necessarily financial help, but I've had a lot of like good support network in my life. And you know, I like to pass that on. Right. And at the end of the day, we're all just people. You know, things happen to all of us. So I remember 9 years ago, my daughter's 9 now. I had my software company, and at the time it was struggling a bit. And when she was born, I had her in a little baby carrier in the office that Jen and I had in Manhattan. It was tiny, like 100 square foot office.
Right.
And I looked at my daughter Nava, and I was like, how am I going to afford to raise this child and give her the life that I want to give her? Right. And, you know, fast forward, not that long later, 9 years, but a lot of hard work. And it's still going, right? Nosh is just beginning and all this stuff. You know, things change, you know, but, you know, at the end of the day, we got one life to live. Let's just make the best of it, you know?
Exactly. So, it's just like the Shawshank. Get busy living or get busy dying, right? Like, you know.
You live to see another day, right? No matter what happens, you know, you live to see another day. And so we get to choose our own adventure in life. That's why we're here. We're choosing every day on like what we want to do. Right now it's about eating greedy. You know, I'm having the most fun I've ever had in life. You know, like my wife and I talk about this all the time. You know, like I feel reborn and alive. And never in a million years did I think I'd be in the restaurant business. But, you know, for anybody watching this, everyone knows. And as we grow, I hope I can keep this, you know, part of our DNA. But I probably arguably spend too much time, you know, not running the business and talking to people. Like my favorite thing in the world is spending time in that restaurant and talking to everybody who comes in, learning their story, telling them mine, and seeing people come back. And then seeing people, by the way, we've only been open 5 months. I can't tell you the countless stories of like people, because, you know, if you've been into Nosh, it's a bit of a tight quarters. Unfortunately, we had 1,200 square feet to work with. But you know, people sit next to people and they're so close to each other, they start talking. And whether they're from Sun City or Margaritaville or Bluff, wherever it is, you know, I've heard stories of people become friends sitting there and then they go out to dinner. And then, you know, it's just a cool little neighborhood spot. It's Jen and I say, like, to our employees and our customers, like, this is a happy place. When you walk into that place, food aside, everything, this is a happy place. If, like, you know, we don't want to bring negativity in here. We don't want our employees to bring negativity. Thankfully, we'll talk about that. We have the best staff. I love them. We're so fortunate. But like, you know, it's intended to be a bright and, you know, happy, vibrant place, just where you feel comfortable. You know, walk in, forget about whatever's going on in your day. Hopefully, spend some time with us. That's it.
And that's a perfect segue. So let's get into that. And there you are, standing right there. I don't know if you can see this on your screen, but there you are. Usually you're over in the right corner over there. You got your laptop out and you're kind of doing your, you know, your payroll or whatever it is.
I hate, if anybody who sees me on that laptop in the corner, I hate being on the laptop.
But you got to listen. That's part of it. But like, and I agree with you. Like it's definitely a, you know, there's a social element to it. As far as, you know, people come in, like you said, the tables are pretty close together. You got some tables outside. We're breaking into that cooler weather now, where it's a little bit more comfortable to sit out there. Most of the time, I'm still sweating, even though I'm inside, because I tend to run hot. But yeah,
by the way, not to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
we are going to be, for those who sit outside, a little secret, maybe next week it'll be up there. Um, I'm not a huge sports fan. I love going to games, but I'm not like a diehard, sports fan
Right.
in general. But I also just feel like I never have time for anything. So that would just be another thing on my plate. However, we are putting a TV outside for all the games this fall.
That's what I love to hear, man.
Yeah, so come in your sweatshirt, hopefully a Nosh one. We have awesome sweatshirts, but sit out there, have your coffee, put your hoodie on, and watch a game, and just spend a day with us. So that'll be up in the next day or two, hopefully.
That's awesome. Well, I'm a merch head, so I'd be happy to. I'm wearing similar colors right now with my Bo Jackson Royals trading card T-shirt. But yeah, I got to get some. I got to get some. And I know when RJ and I were there from Visually Chopped, I know he brought a bunch of stuff home, and he wanted to do content over there because he just loves the food. And what's not to love? This was the spread when my brother and I first went. After you first opened, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sandwiches, I guess. I got a nice coffee there, and that wasn't it because I think you had me try a piece of the babka.
Yeah, and you gotta throw back to Seinfeld and anything else, but that babka, we bring it from Brooklyn. We overnight that stuff, and it's like liquid gold in our store. So I had to bring it out and make sure you try that.
Of course, and we're going to go through a couple of these things. So, and I'm going to bring a couple of these things up probably like as we're talking, but just to go through kind of a couple, you come up to the counter, you got so many of these choices that this was actually, it looks a little bit different now over on this side since you opened. There's a lot of stuff going on over here for to-go orders and things like that. But the menu is very expansive. You guys are constantly adding things, which I think is awesome. The first experience was, I stuck to basically like the breakfast options, and I'm the names are going to escape me. I'm sure you can probably.
That's the locksmith.
That's the locksmith, which is your classic, lox bagel. You got the cucumber, the capers, the red onion. You guys have so many different kinds of spreads, which I love. You did that garlic one a couple of weeks ago or whatever, several weeks ago. My wife loved it, so I had to get a couple extra ones. I even not only did we use it on our bagels, but I had a little bit extra that I left over, and I used it on some English muffins a couple of days later. You and I laugh because I'll walk out of there. I won't eat all of this stuff in one sitting. But I'll walk out of there as you see the sausage, egg, and cheese on the everything bagel, which is definitely one of my favorites. The Bialy was even better. That was out of this world. But what I'll do is I'll order, a couple of sandwiches, and some of them will just be straight to go, or some of them I'll just be, bringing home for Jocelyn. But I like to. Me, variety's the spice of life. The sausage, egg, and cheese obviously is my go-to breakfast sandwich. I had to run out to St. Helena Island where I was doing New Leaf Produce a couple weeks ago, which we're going to be having Selma on from there soon, talking about the vertical growing farm. And I put it in order online, and I picked up the sausage, egg, and cheese on a hard roll. Excuse me. Well, it's a hard roll by definition. It's a Kaiser roll. It really is soft. It's crispy on the outside, but really nice and airy and soft on the outside and the inside, right?
For better or worse, I'm going to break some news to you. So we are, that is the one thing. I'm a perfectionist. I think you know this, right? And I'm constantly trying to make things better. Even if we are selling a ton of something, I'm still looking at it like, how do we make that better? How do we make that better than, so our Kaiser rolls were always very good, but they were not the New York Kaiser hard roll that I was looking for. Coming next week, that roll will no longer exist in our store. And what I now have is a authentic New York hard roll that is coming to Nosh. I can actually, I don't have a picture of it. I thought I did.
That's okay. You know I'm going to share it when well, first of all, I'm going to come and eat it, but I'm going to share it as soon as it comes out. And listen, I like this roll, but I will tell you this. You guys got sandwiches that have a lot of stuff on them, right? So the one thing that I will say as we get into, we said we were going to talk inside baseball. We didn't know that we were going to get inside baseball with hard rolls. But the reality is, I've talked about this on previous episodes of the podcast before. The integrity of the sandwich is something that's important. You want to make sure that when you have that like say the Uncle Leo, which is basically like your Italian hero, and it's loaded up with the cold cuts and all the toppings and everything like that. I'm sure that this new roll is probably going to be more conducive to that type of sandwich. And you guys also have been doing, oh, look how beautiful that is. And you guys have also been doing the more recently, you've been doing the smash burgers on Tuesdays, right?
Yeah, so we did on Tuesdays, just as like, it's funny. My team is always coming up, also our team, with like some creative stuff. And, we try to balance, I say this all the time internally, look, we want a menu that has a lot of breadth, a variety, but we also really want to stay true to who we are and the core of like what we do, right? And this is very different from what's been here. A lot of my team comes from the South. Half of them were born on Hilton Head. They're very used to Southern style and so forth, and they're always obviously wanting to influence some of our dishes with their Southern style. And I say no disrespect to the South, because I love it, is why we moved here, but there are plenty of Southern restaurants down here. We didn't open to be a Southern restaurant. We opened to be the opposite of that, to offer what we offer and do really well. So we stick true to that. But at the end of the day, it's really about keeping that menu tight enough where when you come into Nosh, you know what you're going to get. Like, I love this, I love that. I'm coming in, I get the same thing every other day, every day. We see the same people all the time. It's amazing. We want it to be a place that you can eat at every day, right? And the smash burgers are just a fun idea. One of my chefs came to me and he's like, we got to offer a burger. We got to offer. And I kept saying no. I'm being, true story. No, we're not a burger place. We're not a burger place. We're not a burger place. One day I was on that laptop you were talking about, and he comes over and he just throws a burger in front of me on an inverted bagel, like we do our grilled cheese, where we flip the bagel, inside out, and we grill the inside, which becomes the outside and whatever. And pardon my French, but I was like, holy shit. I was like, okay, we can add a burger. Like, let's try it on Tuesdays.
Right.
So we launched the Smash Burger Tuesdays. It's been doing great. It's just fun. Burgers take a long time to cook. So unfortunately we can't, do it every day, because we do everything, to a high standard. So we keep it to Tuesdays, but it's just been an awesome little menu addition and some fun stuff that we do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, you want to play the hits, but you also, you want to be introducing some newer stuff, because, that's what's going to kind of and I've said this before. I'm a sucker. I just said it yesterday when I was talking to Walker Venrick from Smokehouse, because we're coming up on football season, and I'm a sucker for a good special. So when I see something, I haven't gotten a chance to come over for the smash burger yet, just because I've had conflicts on Tuesday, but I'm going to get there and I'm going to try it. Like I said, I'm a sucker for a good special. So like I said, your mind is constantly moving on a bunch of different things, but as it pertains to Nosh, you're always thinking about, like, what can I bring in? And I think that's a good time to also kind of transition to, and we had, I just wanted people to see, there's the Taylor ham, egg and cheese pork roll. If you're from South Jersey, okay, fine. That's another.
There is, just to tell you, everyone seems to forget it. I'm from Monmouth County. There is a Central Jersey that everybody.
Right. They kind of skip right over that, right?
Yeah. So, I just want to shout out to anybody who's, from the central part of the state, but there is a whole part that isn't just north or south.
What do they call it in Central Jersey? What do they call it?
I mean, look, I think it goes both ways. I've always known it as a pork roll.
Okay. I've always known it as Taylor ham. The saga continues, right?
The reality is, it is Taylor ham. I mean, look, on a pork roll, an authentic pork roll, is the brand Taylor ham.
It's the Kleenex tissue
Taylor
situation.
Ham, egg and cheese.
Right, exactly. It's the old
whatever
Kleenex
it is,
tissue.
call it whatever you want. It just needs to come out great.
Yes, exactly. Another one here, the Eggy Balboa, which is basically a cheesesteak. This one is on, I think, an egg everything, or definitely an egg bagel.
Yep.
That one is absolutely delicious. There's also a similar lunch version, right, that doesn't have the egg
Yeah,
on
Yo
it. So,
Adrian, where it's just a massive amount of cheesesteak, without the egg.
and
So,
you're also, I'll tell you, I also say this, and we spoke about this the first time that I came. You guys are very generous with the portions in terms of, the number of ounces of meat that you're putting on these sandwiches. I think you said very early on, you basically decided to, increase that by like 50% as far as how much you were putting on there,
yeah,
of
we
the
did.
meat on these sandwiches. And the thing that the one thing that I will say when I'm eating a breakfast sandwich, if I'm eating a breakfast sandwich and it's just got a couple, like there was one bagel place back home where they had such thin sliced Taylor ham pork roll, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
that I would always order double because I always felt like I was wanting for more.
Right.
Now, I'm not always going to get a sausage, egg, and cheese with with an extra sausage patty like I did that one day because I
Yep.
was a little hungrier. I ate greedy that day on my way out to St. Helena because I wanted a little extra sausage on there. But you guys are generous with those portions. And I'm going to segue into, like I said, a couple of the things. This was going back a couple months to some new things that you added. We got your standard bacon, egg, and cheese there. But there was one day when I came in and you were, you were kind of doing some salads at first, and then you kind of did away from that because it was taking a lot of time.
We killed those real quick.
You
What
did,
we
you
learned
did.
real fast? Nobody comes to Nosh
to eat a salad. They're going for their carb fix. They don't need to. There's plenty of other places that you can get a great salad. I had a delicious poke bowl at Al's last week at lunch.
Yeah,
it was
I like
awesome.
Al's a lot.
Al's is great.
Cool.
Let me just rejigger this thing here so that it starts following me again.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
we had good salads, but from an efficiency and operational perspective, our whole thing is we want to get food out really as quick as possible without ever impacting the quality. Like the three pillars that I live and die by are quality, service, and value.
Yes.
The third one being what you just talked about before. Look, food is expensive. Everything in life is expensive nowadays.
Right.
That's just a fact.
Right.
At the end of the day, if we're all going to be subject to paying good money for things, I just firmly believe that there's a price value relationship between
absolutely
everything in life. And if we're going to charge between $9 and $15 for a sandwich, which I think is an average price point, but I want to give above average experience. And so,
yes.
We deliver value, so you get an Uncle Leo from us, which has, salami, ham, and turkey. I mean, I see more people take half home. We go through more to-go boxes, or people come in and say, you know what, like we're going to share a sandwich. Maybe that's not the best thing for business, but at the end of the day, I'm happy you're there, right? You're sharing a sandwich, you're getting coffee, you're hanging out, like end of story. We just deliver value, and that's, we're not trying to be the cheapest restaurant in Bluffton. Or in the Bluffton area, we're trying to make sure that we deliver, amazing service, amazing value, amazing quality every time. And when you leave, you say, wow, that was worth it. And just like, that's it.
And for those people, I know there's people that are very, cost sensitive. For those people that, we could, I don't want to get into this part of it, but we talk about food costs, and there's a lot of like sort of misunderstanding. I'm just trying to find another photo that I want to pull up later, but there's a lot of misunderstanding these days about what it costs to run a restaurant, what it costs in terms of food costs and things like that. So, and you've had to talk me off the ledge a couple of times where, I'll start getting into, arguments with people online because they're complaining about, how much, it costs for a sandwich. But like you said, if you're giving quality and you're giving, significant quantity as well, guess what? Like you're gonna get what you pay for. So if you're gonna get a bagel sandwich and it's only gonna cost a couple bucks, well, you might not be particularly satisfied with that sandwich because of the quality of the ingredients or the lack thereof, right? So there's a lot of attention paid to that. Sure. And and as we talked about, like you said, you're constantly innovating. You brought me in the one day we had the wraps, right? We had the chicken Caesar wrap. which I thought was really good.
It's funny you say that. So my favorite thing, we're a bagel shop. Although I honestly, we put out so much food. Like people really come to us for the experience of like a great sandwich.
Yep.
We sell a lot of bagels, obviously, but New York, New Jersey, people are coming in. They're buying dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of bagels. Here we're selling dozens of bagels like that, but we're really selling our food. Like it's really about the creations that we put out. And ironically, people don't always know this, but we also can do anything in a wrap. Anything,
Right.
Any sandwich doesn't have to be on a bagel, it could be on a wrap. My favorite thing in a restaurant is actually we have it's called the South of the Border wrap. I think that's That's it.
Yep.
Like my staff, it's my favorite sandwich at Nosh, which is so funny because it's the opposite of like, our core, but it is an amazing, amazing wrap. I get it for lunch almost every day. Probably why I gained 7 pounds.
I'm right there with you, man. This one was really good. I showed you the Caesar. And then what's the third one that we got here?
There's a buffalo chicken wrap.
Yes, that was also very good. I did take a couple of pieces of these home because it was another one of those things where I had 3 different wraps on the table and then another sandwich and things like that. These wraps are delicious. And so basically, I think the next thing that we should go to from here, as we, you and I could continue talking about food and talking about sandwiches for hours upon hours. But one of the other things that we wanted to touch on, as we mentioned, kind of like the inside baseball. You and I, we also wanted to kind of get into not too much into the weeds, but let's get into a little bit about the challenges that come with running a restaurant, both between the employees behind the counter and in the back of the house, and then also the challenges with the public. Like when you opened, there were some people that were complaining how long that, like you had a Sunday where you said you made 150 bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches, and you had someone come up to you and say you guys are effing pathetic or something because they had to wait. Like what are you supposed to do about that? You're not going to have 100 pre-made bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches sitting on the counter there. Then they're going to complain that the sandwich isn't hot or that's not fresh or whatever the case is. But let's talk about the operational type of stuff. We're not going to get into because you're not going to make everybody happy. And you, like I said, you've kind of told me it's not worth getting into it with people. You appreciate the fact that I'm trying to stick up for you guys at times. But the bottom line is, obviously, you guys are doing something right when you got lines out the door. And I've never been there. I said this when RJ and I, with the content that we released several weeks ago, I've never been there when the place has been dead and there's been nobody there. There's always been at least a half a dozen, a dozen and a half or more people. So obviously you're doing something, but let's get into that type of stuff for a few minutes.
We're really lucky. Like the community support for us has been just unbelievable.
It really has.
We'll call it Greater Bluffton. But just even, I remember somebody one time telling me about Sun City and they were like, they can make or break you. And, Sun City has been such an incredible customer base for us, and just so supportive, and Margaritaville and you name it. I could name neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood. For all the way from Oldfield out to Hampton Lake and Hampton Hall, you name it, the power of these communities and their local, Facebook pages and next doors. And, we've been amazingly fortunate that we haven't had to do advertising and spend all this money in advertising. What we do is rather than do that, we put the money back in our people and our food. Right. So, first and foremost, like anything in life is hard. I worked for other people and other companies my whole life, and that was hard. I've owned my own businesses, and that's hard. Nothing that's worth doing is easy, and everything is about, perspective. Truth be told, it's easy. Food gets very emotional for people.
Yes.
And everybody is a food critic, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in we all have different likes. We all have different taste buds. We like you and I can taste the same strawberry and taste something completely different, right? I mean, it's the same strawberry, but we can feel something different. We can taste something different. So, Jen and I have put our heart, our soul, our life savings, everything into this business. And so in the beginning, it would be very upsetting if we got a bad review. We really it would crush us, you know, because, and it wasn't that we got a bad review. It was that we felt like we failed somebody.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like, oh, someone
felt like you let them
review.
down.
You know, that I could, it just, we felt like we let somebody down, you know?
Right.
But what I've learned is that, look, food's emotional. Everybody has a different perception. Everybody has a different expectation. When you're talking about something so strong of an emotional response, like New York bagels, right? Like, you know, there are people who say, it's not a New York bagel. Like, the reality is, it is. Our bagels literally are hand rolled and boiled in Queens, New York. We bring them down. I cold truck them, you know, multiple times a week, and then we bake them fresh every day. It is a real New York bagel. However, it may be different than the New Jersey or the New York bagel place that you grew up with, right? Even if you go to two places in New Jersey or two places, they're different bagels, you know? They're different size, they're different shape, they're different flavor, they're different. So everybody has their favorite bagel, you know? So, you know, we'll say that. But at the end of the day, people are entitled to feel whatever they feel, as long as we didn't offend them or we didn't do anything. We put everything we can into our people. You know, we have an amazing staff. We have over 20 people that work for us. Anyone who's been to Nosh knows, you come on like any day, but like a Saturday, Sunday, we've got 12 people, 14 people in that, what I call the box. We're all bumping into each other, you know, we feel the pressure. Like when someone's standing there waiting for their food, we know, like we feel it, you know, but we're very conscious of ticket times and so forth. We have a hotline, a cold line, we have all this stuff. But at the end of the day, we just try to do the very, very, very best that we can. And what I always say is, look, if for whatever reason Nosh was not for you, there are so many businesses down here. There are so many restaurants, you know, like people try all the time to compare, and they do it, you know, a lot of times in a positive way, but will compare us to another bagel shop, you know, locally. And I say, listen, like we never opened this business to, you know, go against another business, especially another sole proprietor who has also put their life into their business, right? So there is plenty of business to go around for everyone. So if Nosh was not something that you felt was for you, you know, by all means, like, please go and support another local business, because that is another parent, another couple, another person who is literally just trying to do the right thing every day and try to put, you know, their little nest egg together to be successful, right? They're not trying to hurt anybody.
No.
You know? So like New York and New Jersey, I mean, how many times you go into any little strip center and you knew there was a Chinese restaurant, a pizza restaurant, a nail salon, and a bagel place? I mean,
and there was, I would go, if I was in Wyckoff, I would go to Goldberg's. And if I was in Hawthorne, I would go to Sunrise. And now that there's a new place, Carlos Bagels, that I know that when I go there and I'm staying with my cousin, I'm eating at Carlos's a couple times because that's their spot. My cousin's a creature of habit. He just likes to play the hits. But I would go to different bagel places. I would go to different delis, because one time I wanted an Italian sandwich from this Italian deli. Another time I wanted an Italian. I would go to Angelina's in Hawthorne. I would go to Latito's in Ramsey. I would go to, you know, I don't need to give all the specifics. The Wyckoff Deli, I would go to, you know, like the one of them that what I went to last time was La Strada, which was, you know, one of the delis that was owned by a family that I grew up with called the Grassos. They had three delis in three different towns, and I celebrated all of them. So there's two things that I want to touch on there. One is, like you said, you guys have a great staff. Everybody is happy to be there. The worst thing that you want when you go in a restaurant is when people, especially the front-facing people, are not like, you know, they don't have a good attitude. You guys, it runs from the top down. It's the culture, just like you would talk about any corporation or any small company. You got a great staff there. They're working their absolute butts off. And like you said, the second thing is you're not trying to, like, yes, like, I guess anything, like, you know, you're always going to be competing for customers' business in some way. But the reality is that you're not trying to put Island Bagel or one of these other places out of business. Like you said, there's more than enough mouths to feed. It's okay for someone to go to Nosh on a Tuesday, and then maybe they want to go to Island Bagel on a Saturday or something like that, because of where they're going and the store they're going to, or maybe their kid likes this, or their wife or husband or son or daughter, brother, sister, mother, father, whatever, likes this or that. That's okay. Again, It's okay to go to Joe's, whatever. It's okay to go to the ice cream stop one day, and it's okay the next week to go to Jack Frost, and then it's okay if you want to go to Rita's and go get a chain another day. Sometimes people are going to go to Essa Bagel or Brooklyn, and not that those are around here, but sometimes people are just, it's going to be out of convenience, and they're going to go get something. That doesn't mean that everybody's at each other's throats. Like you said, everybody is just trying to earn a living. Everybody's just trying to feed their family, and everybody is just trying to make an honest living and run a business. And that doesn't mean that it has to be at the detriment of another business.
No, look, competition, you want competition. Competition is good, right? And it's not to, compete and win and put somebody else out of business. But what competition does for the general public is it takes the base of what's available as far as options go, and it elevates it. Okay. So maybe here, and I'm just generalizing, but like I've been here forever, or in any area, if there's not a lot of competition, what it allows is for things to be subpar, right? And they can survive that way because there's not much else, right? So good competition by an influx of new culinary restaurants and so forth, that's going to happen here. And it's already happening. I mean, I can name a whole handful just in the last 2 years I've been here that are like fantastic, but it's going to elevate the entire food base here. And it's going to do one of two things. It's going to take the businesses that deserve to be here and really put their best foot forward and put out amazing food. And they're going to thrive and survive, and they're going to be here forever, right? And then it's going to take the ones that unfortunately, are just getting by and did get by because of his density, but not a lot of option. And those are going to end up, being naturally weeded out, but they'll, and I'm not hoping that for anyone, but they'll be replaced by, something better, because you will no longer be able to come into this market with something average. It just won't be acceptable anymore.
I want to tack on to that because you hit on something that's super important. I'm going to mention something that, they shall remain nameless, but there is a local pizza proprietor that summed things up very simply, because, when something new comes to market, there's always going to be people that are going to be defensive, whether it's another pizza shop owner or another bagel shop owner or something like that. And unfortunately, there are some unscrupulous tactics and some things that people do, right? The bottom line is, and that we were talking about basically other companies feeling threatened by somebody new coming into the marketplace and all that kind of stuff. You know what his response to that was, Michael? If you have a problem with it, make better food. And that's kind of basically what you said. So if you're going to be if you're going to play defense, it's almost like in my business as mortgage. If you're going to knock me down or you're going to take shots at me, then, and if I'm getting the business and you're not, then maybe you should be doing a better job for your customers as opposed to saying negative things about me to other people, which again, that's just one example. It happens in all different kinds of businesses. So that's
everything's about experience, Nick. Like at the end of the day, I say I'm not a huge sports fan, but I do love going to games. One of the best things I've gotten out of the South so far is the Savannah Bananas. Like I light up with my wife and my kids when we go to a game. And I've been, obsessed with like following Jesse Cole and like looking at his biography and following, his documentary. And this guy, like literally, it just goes to show what the future of any business is going to be. It's all experiential, right? It's all about experience. This guy took like a failing baseball league and a team that nobody wanted to go to, and baseball wasn't the problem, right? People love baseball, but they got bored with the experience, right? So what did he do? He infused and injected the experience with just life,
entertainment,
and it has gone bonkers, right? So it's the same thing for any business, anything. Times change, things change. People this day and age want to spend their money where they feel good, right? Not just full. So it's about experience.
Absolutely. Somehow I lost my my banner there. I just noticed that now. Yes. So I will be honest. I am not a Savannah Bananas person. Okay.
Because you're a diehard sports fan. So
and again, because let's be real, that's the thing. It's not, I did enjoy when I was a kid going to see the Harlem Globetrotters, but I will say this. I appreciate everything that you said. The guy, Jesse, like what he's done is
That's
incredible. And I went to a game, and I went with my wife and my sister and her boyfriend and my cousin. And, we had a good time. I enjoyed the fact that you get free food. And of course, me, it wasn't enough to get a burger and a hot dog and whatever. I had to get some of the other stuff that I wanted to pay for. Right. But, and also like, I had a conversation with somebody about this, and I won't get into too much detail about it, but that like I worked for the Nets basketball team when I got out of college, right? So I worked for the Nets. I worked at the office, and then we worked games. Not every game, but we worked a lot of games. We were owned by the same entity that owned the Devils. And so I even had to work Devil games because they wanted to cross-sell. The Yankees, because it was Yankee Nets. The Yankees had a minority interest in the Nets and the Devils, and the Nets and the Devils owners had a minority interest in the Yankees. There were times that we would have to go to Yankee Stadium to try to sell Nets tickets, which was wild to me. But the reason why I'm saying that is because I was also a Giants fan, and I had a couple of not season tickets, but I had the opportunity to see a few Giants games a year from friends that did have season tickets. And I went to a ton of concerts. I sat here last night doing a fantasy draft, and we got into talking about it. They were asking me about all my memorabilia that surrounds me. What you don't see is I have tickets now that they don't do them anymore, obviously the hard tickets for the most part, but I have tickets to every single sporting event that I ever went to and concerts when they were still doing paper tickets. I got 3 or 4 shoeboxes full of them. If I ever have the opportunity to have like a full bar, I'm going to want to do the thing where they got something similar over at Rome's in Savannah, where it's a little cloudy there, so it's a little bit different of a style, but I would love to do a thing where I can have an entire bar or something like that covered, and I would have more tickets than I could even know what to do with to cover that, between Nets games and Nets playoffs and Giants games, Mets games, Yankee games, concerts, everything. So yes, I'm a huge sports fan, but I also think to a certain extent I got that out of my system at a very young age. So these days, more my gear is to go to like the smaller venues, like we saw Silver Sun Pickups last year at Charleston Music Hall. Of course, I made sure to be opportunistic and went to Jackrabbit Philly and had an amazing meal before they moved to their new location. I can't wait to go back up there and visit my cousin and check that out. But yes, I kind of got it out of my system early. But again, I'm a pro wrestling fan. Wrestling is scripted entertainment too, right? I mean, now you might be able to call it a sport because now their premium live events are going to be televised on ESPN. I'm not happy about having to spend $30 a month for it, but the fact of the matter is, the Savannah Bananas, I get it. They're entertaining. It's family oriented. The music's going. The guys are performing. They're no different than a pro wrestler. They're going to put themselves out there, and they're going to, not necessarily put their bodies on the line like a wrestler, but they're going to go out there and they're going to perform for the entertainment of the fans that are in attendance. And I have an immense amount of respect for that. Absolutely.
It's about how they make people feel.
Exactly.
Same thing with food. It's like, how did the experience, how did the food, how did it make me feel? If it made me feel good, I want to go back. It's very simple.
Yes, and you genuinely care about that, and that's why you have so many people coming back. All right, so I call this the Indulgent Hour because we try to keep it under an hour. We
could probably talk for another 6, but
we could go, and
I got to get back to the restaurant in a few minutes. Also, as I'm sitting here, my team's talking to me about, we got to place our truck order. I got to get back on that laptop. So
we will continue to talk offline, but before we wrap this up, I just want to go through a couple more quick ones right here because yes, you got a ton of bagels, you got sandwiches, you got wraps, you got smash burgers. If you go by there, you can get some fruit. You can get some, you want to just buy your lox. You want to just buy your spreads. You want to just buy a parfait. You got all this stuff. You got the salads, right, that are in here. So meaning, not salads, but
all the cream cheeses, all the chopped BLT, everything, all the homemade.
The chop, that's what I meant. The chopped BLT is outstanding, by the way.
Thank you.
In terms of having that sort of like that concoction of all that good stuff blended together, and that's part of like your ongoing, never-ending, creativity, which of course I have a tremendous amount of admiration for. We talked about the babka. Of course, you guys, you got to do it to us. You put this glass case right by where you're going to pick up the food at the one end of the counter. And you know me, I can't walk out of there without a chocolate babka. And as Elaine said, The cinnamon babka is definitely the inferior babka, but it's still delicious. So if you're at a chocolate, I'm still taking that's what I did that day. I put it in an order for the sausage, egg, and cheese, and I grabbed the chocolate babka to go. They're absolutely delicious. Highly recommend them. You even have bagel chips, right? That's what we got over here.
We make fresh bagel chips, which are great to dip into anything and so forth. Some other stuff you may not know, actually, we've gotten really heavy into catering lately. So we didn't want to do that for the first couple months because we really wanted to make sure our in-store experience was as strong as it could be.
Right.
Now we've gotten into catering. We've been doing a bunch of, sales meetings, parties, car dealerships. I'm a big freak, by the way. Like back in New Jersey, you go to a car dealership and you go there on a Saturday morning, get an oil change. You got a coffee and a half a bagel.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason here, you get like a granola bar. So I'm trying to change that. No disrespect to granola bars, but so we're really getting into that. And then, for anybody listening, obviously, online ordering is massive for us, whether it's through a third party like DoorDash or Grubhub or Uber.
Right.
But we also have our own website, shameless plug, but NoshNYBagels.com. We make it really simple for anyone to go on, order on your way to work or whatever, and you just walk in and it's there waiting for you, ready to go. So that's been a huge, advantage to get these lines down that used to be in the store early on.
That definitely helps with the volume, and not for nothing, but I also want to add in, last but not least, Nightingale ice cream sandwiches, right?
Yeah, there are Nightingale ice cream sandwiches. They probably should be outlawed. They're like they're incredible. We do 3 different flavors, and if you've never had a Nightingale ice cream sandwich, whether it's from us or the couple other places that carry it locally, they're fantastic.
They are delicious, and you even got the chomp ones, which are the smaller versions.
Yeah.
Those are always some nice treats that you can get, obviously, for the kids, or even if you just want to indulge for yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I know what we took up a lot of time. I just want to, before I let you go, I just want to, and again, you might not have an answer to this, and if not, that's fine. As we go, we're going to pull up a picture. There's the lone wolf right there outside of Nosh. You can easily see it right from 170. You can follow them at Nosh NY Bagels on Facebook, and similarly on Instagram at Nosh NY Bagels. Michael gave you the URL for the website. I always like to wrap things up in part. I always break this up into kind of 3 parts in my head, although we probably did a lot more parts today. Is there anything else? You talked about the TVs and the games and things like that. Anything else that you want to bring up for the audience, for things that they should expect? They know that they're going to continue to get innovation from you guys, that you're going to continue putting out new stuff and different stuff and everything like that. But is there anything else that's coming down the pike that you want to mention before we say goodbye?
For the most part, we're good. I'll just say, I just want to thank everybody, obviously the whole local and expanded community. I mean, we literally have people coming from Hilton Head to drive across and from, areas from Beaufort and from all over the place. I will just leave it at, we did not go into this intending to just have a bagel shop. So
right.
If we don't currently have a store in your area, it is quite possible that there will be one coming. So
wow. So see, that's the kind of salacious stuff that I like to close out.
Yeah, look, again, we want to make sure we get it right always. So we're very, very careful. But this store, which has been fantastic, will not be the only Nosh, that pops up. So hopefully, with some good fortune, there'll be more to come.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I'm very excited. I'm over the moon thrilled for you guys. I'm grateful to have connected with you and become friends with you. I'm super appreciative of all the advice that you've given me. I'm grateful to you for feeding me. And as you said, all these relationships that I have in this industry, they start with me coming in and being a paid customer. And listen, you got a rewards program. I take full advantage of that. You did hook me up with a little bit of a discount in the beginning, but I also ordered $100 worth of food that day, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't because you're a food grade; it's because you had a tremendous amount of food,
eating $125 worth of food. So you took a little bit off. But the fact of the matter is that I come in, I pay for my food. You and I catch up. We have a conversation. I love the staff. They're always so nice to me. The familiar faces, they greet me when I walk in the door, which I'm super appreciative. You know, a lot of times I say I've like, what's it called? The syndrome, imposter syndrome with this stuff. A lot of times, you know, when you're having a bad day, you think to yourself, do people really care about this? But we're catching on, and you and I have been talking about doing this for a while. I think we should definitely get together and do it again. I think maybe sometime down the road, maybe we do something like when RJ and I were there. Maybe we do something on site when we can sit outside and have a chat and things like that when things aren't cranked up. But let's get you back to the store, get you back to the orders and things that you got to do. And dude, thanks so much for taking the time today. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, listen, Nick, thanks for having me. Thanks for what you do. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. So we'll see y'all soon. Say hi when you're in the store.
Hell yeah, brother. I'll talk to you soon. All right. And I'll see you soon for that smash burger, among other things, right?
All right, bud. Thanks.
Take it easy, bro. Have a great day. All right, bye. All right, guys. So that was a lot of fun. I know we went a little long today, but I think that you guys will enjoy that. Obviously, we want to spend some time talking about food and all the delicious stuff that you can get at Nosh NY Bagels. But I think this was really interesting. It's always good when you get to kind of peel the curtain back at what makes me a fan of the wrestling business. I love the product on television, but really what interests me and drives me, my interest in the product is the behind the scenes stuff and what goes into it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the inside baseball aspect of it, both from the standpoint of running a restaurant, starting a new business in a new area, and the immense following that they've gotten, but then also, you know, how much they care about how they take care of their customers and how there is a constant effort to continue to make better food and to continue to make new things that are going to be going out there that people are going to enjoy. So I'm going to stop blabbing as we head into early afternoon here on Thursday, September 4th. I don't want to give up too much information, but I'm going to just keep it coming. So we got more stuff coming over the next couple of weeks, couple of months. Let's just, you know, just like my boy Pat McAfee says, how you doing? Keep it moving. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Hope you enjoy Nosh. Go over there and eat greedy. Tell me Indulgent Islander sent you. Stay hungry, my friends. Indulgent Islander